Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Justin Young, and that man right there is none other than Griffin Greenburg. And Griff, what's up, buddy? It's been a minute since we've been talking about West Coast basketball.
It's been a little bit, but I mean, I feel like we're talking about it the perfect time right now in the season.
It is the perfect time. I think that was the right time to kind of blow the dust off the whole podcast machine and get back in it and to talk about some California basketball, particularly because, as we know, the CIF is absolutely stacked, and we've got so many good teams to talk about. And I feel like with COVID, there's kind of been like this, it's been a slow release of the water from the dam, but now I feel like we've taken the whole thing out. It's full bore. We got all the water coming out at the right time. And it really feels like this year's playoffs in California so far has been unbelievable. Coming up, it's going to be even better. And really, when it comes down to it, really the who's are still playing and really the best guys are still going after it, which I think really kind of leads to a really good dialogue. So we got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about so far what you've learned in the postseason in the state of California. We're going to talk about some matchups. We're going to talk about some things that you've gathered along the way. We're going to talk about some players that are on the come up and a lot of conversations in between all those talking points. So I think it's time to jump right into it. Griffin, you've had a chance to see a lot of games and really kind of taking a look at teams from all over the state. Big picture, what have you gathered? What do you feel like you've learned? And what are kind of storylines that here we are on March 2nd? It's a Thursday, March 2nd, as we're recording this. We know we got games tonight that you feel like you've walked away with and really feel like you've learned so far.
I'd say for the California basketball landscape as a whole, you could definitely argue that it's probably the top in the country. I mean, you have multiple high-level Division I players on the same team that aren't even in the open division for state, which is, by the way, the highest. It's like Notre Dame, who, Mercy Miller, Caleb Foster, Dusty Stromer are in Division I. They're the number 1 seed. You have other teams like Sierra Canyon, Etowanda, Rancho Christian, who are in that. And that's not even the top division. So that alone, I feel like goes to show how powerful the state of California is. And I mean, we're diving in right into a great playoff session in multiple divisions.
I feel like it's kind of been mounting too. We talked about this as we opened up. I think about the last 2 summers, the last 2 Junes at Section 7 out here in Phoenix, where you saw these teams coming in from California. You kind of look like, holy crap, there's so much depth of talent from Northern California, from the middle part of California, the southern part of California, all the way down to literally from, you can go from border to border, and there's teams that have depth of talent across the board. So it doesn't surprise me to hear you say that, that really the strength, I think there's strength in all of these brackets up to this point. So I'm trying to think where to go from here. But, we look back at last year, Centennial were the champions. Let me just throw it out there. Buy or sell. Are you buying or selling that Centennial will repeat as the champion in the open division in the CIF?
I'd say you could buy, but I will say that the team surrounding them are, more, I wouldn't say maybe more experienced, but they've definitely developed and bonded well together. I mean, if you look at a team like Harvard Westlake, who just last year was pretty young. I mean, Brady Dunlap's a junior. So was Jacob Huggins, Trent Perry, and Robert Hinton were sophomores, and now they've all grown, played together for another year. I think we've seen that with a few of these teams, especially St. Augustine. So I will say, Justin, I would buy Corona Centennial repeating just because of their history. And I don't know if you saw that insane championship.
I was about ready to ask you about it.
Yeah, against Bosco. But there are some real legitimate threats to them defending their title.
Donovan Denton was one of my favorite players in the state of California last year, and now he's in New Mexico having a pretty good freshman season. And obviously, we know about Jared McCain. He's going to Duke. Plenty of notoriety there. But to your point about the game-winning play, Aaron McBride, to me, is what high school basketball is all about. He's an unbelievable human being, at least my interactions with him. He's going to LMU. He's going to be playing, I think, right away because he's so competitive. But it didn't surprise me. He had a game, like a breakaway, a huge steal, breakaway dunk that really kind of sealed the victory for Centennial. But it seems like anytime there's a game of significance, Aaron McBride is like right in the middle with that spotlight shining right on top of him, where he's built for this, man. Like, he's just so accustomed to big moments. I mean, I'm trying to think. It's funny. I asked him, this is a funny story. I forgot about this. In June, we're at Section 7. We're at the State Farm Stadium where the Cardinals play. It's big, it's vast. And I'm standing back there and I'm trying to get players to talk to. Aaron hadn't made a decision yet as to where he was going to go. And I thought he was phenomenal there. And I asked him after the game in one of the media sessions, I said, "Hey, have you ever?" I said, "You know who you remind me of?" He goes, "Who's that? Who's that?" I said, "You remind me of Shane Battier." And he kind of looked at me, had no idea who I was talking about. And you might not even really know because you're pretty young yourself. But Shane Battier for me was one of my favorite players I ever watched in college. Obviously started Duke, National Player of the Year, played in the NBA with Miami Heat and Memphis Grizzlies and a couple other places. But really, to me, one of the most effective glue guys there's ever been at the collegiate and the pro level. And I think Aaron McBride has so many Shane Battier qualities to him that I think he's going to be an absolute stud at LMU. And we saw that huge play. I mean, it's not surprising at all that he made that play, right? Like, not at all.
No. And I like your comparison to Shane Battier. It kind of reminds me of a Nicholas Batum type player where it's, you'll do everything right. And, he can get you a 20-point game, but it's not going to take away from other players. It's only going to add on to the team, and he's going to help out others around him. And I mean, that was just, I'd say probably the craziest ending I've ever seen to a city or a section championship game.
And I think that really set the tone, didn't it? Right, for the postseason that we've seen so far. Like, it just feels like every game that you watch is like possession for possession, battle for battle. And really the guys that have to be the guys have been the guys. And I think that's the beauty so far of this really great class. And it's funny too, with like McBride and McCain and these guys with Corona Centennial. Like, I remember them coming over here to Phoenix during like that still kind of that gray area where, there wasn't a lot of competition happening in California. They came over here all the time just to get some run in. And McBride and McCain, those guys were a part of that. They were younger guys, but it feels very similar to what we're seeing with like Harvard Westlake, right? Like, these young guys getting great experience against great teams. When their moment comes as seniors, they're not surprised and shocked by anything. So anyways, it's been kind of fun to see this journey play out of like really the last 3 years for this group. Who poses the biggest threat to you or to Centennial in your opinion?
I would say Harvard Westlake. I mean, I think it's going to be tough for Harvard Westlake to go into Bosco and get this win on Saturday, just because I feel like Bosco it's like Harvard Westlake a few years ago, just a really young team, but they all just mesh together and it works. I mean, LZ's going to get you 15 or 20. He was pretty good in the that championship game. Kate Bonham he's also been pretty good all season. Jack Turner, I think he's pretty much been the X factor for that team. But this is an experienced Harvard Westlake team. And I will remind you, Justin, everyone talks about Centennial not beating a California team in almost 2 years. Harvard Westlake was the last team that they lost to in California. So that's just one thing to keep track of. And like I said, that was a young team at the time. And now obviously more experience, a lot of chemistry. But I feel like there are a good amount of teams that kind of have that mesh and vibe together in this open division state championship playoff.
Yeah, I think it really sets the stage for really a fun couple weeks ahead of us. So to that end, Griffin, talk to me about some of the matchups or some of the games, maybe like forecasting ahead, that if you had to pick a couple games to put a butt in a seat, which one are you eyeballing?
Yeah, I'd say this Harvard Westlake versus St. John Bosco game is, like I mentioned, one to definitely watch out for. I mean, we saw them play a few weeks ago, and Harvard Westlake was, at one point rolling through teams throughout the season. And I mean, we saw early in the pool play of Southern Section playoffs for Harvard Westlake, it was a little shaky in some of their games. And I mean, Bosco just capitalized on that. So it will be fun to see that. It's also going to be interesting for me to see how Bosco responds. I mean, that's just such a heartbreaking way to lose a championship game. And the next game you're playing one of the best teams in California that you just beat, and now you have to beat them once again. So I think that's a interesting key that many don't really take into account in this situation.
Yeah, that's one of those level up games, right? For those young guys, like you mentioned. I mean, heartbreak certainly is prevalent this time of year, but how do you respond? How do you move on? And that's kind of the beauty of having another game here in this type of bracket setup. And again, I think that's what those are the lessons learned that even as sophomores and freshmen that really, really impact on how you can get through that as a junior and senior. So this pivot now looking at Bosco moving forward certainly is a team that's kind of waiting in the wings to really kind of put their flag on the map if you will, there in California for the years to come. No doubt about it. Any other matchups coming up that intrigue you?
Yeah, I think it's both a intriguing player-to-player matchup and a team-to-team matchup. St. Joseph versus Doherty Valley, I think, is a very exciting one. Obviously, you and I have been very high on Tunde Yusufu all year, and I've also really enjoyed Ryan Beasley all season. So those two players going head-to-head is going to be a very exciting one. But I love this matchup because I feel like those two are obviously the stars of their team, but they have a team that just complements them so well.
Yeah.
And it's both of them are very well-rounded. I mean, Caden Hamilton, Julius Price, just a couple of the guys on St. Joseph's who are averaging over 10 a game this season. And Doherty Valley has Connor Sevilla, he's been one of my favorite players to watch in California this season, as I've seen him throughout the year. He's averaging over 20 a game, close to 50% shooting from beyond the arc. So I think this is going to be a great player-to-player matchup, although I don't think we'll see Tunde and Ryan guard each other just due to the fact that Tunde's 6'6" and more of a forward, and Ryan's a point guard. But it'll be a great matchup, team to team and player to player wise.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Tunde to me is Jaylen Brown 2.0. Man, I love it. I love watching him play. Every time I see him play, he reminds me of Jaylen Brown, the same age. I was in Atlanta when Jaylen was coming up through the ranks at Wheeler High School. But yeah, I'm a huge Tunde guy. As a big of a fan also of Ryan Beasley too. I'm with you, man. I think he is really one of the more underappreciated guards nationally, and I think he's going to be an unbelievable college player. I love what he brings to the table. I love the fact those guys are playing each other. When did you say they're playing Saturday?
Yeah, those two teams are playing Saturday. All the second round matchups or the regional semifinals matchups are set for Open Division at Saturday at 7.
Got it. I'll definitely be tuning in. My online viewing consumption, I'm glad it's like not the old days where you had to pay for minutes on your cell phone plan. I'm glad I don't have to pay for data points used on my internet plan because I've been streaming, man. I have been streaming all over the country. It's actually been tons of fun. All right, I'm looking here at my checklist here. Okay, so from a stock raising standpoint, in the postseason thus far, even as we round out this season, any players out there that you feel like, oh man, they're making a jump and we've got to take notice?
I think people really have to look out for Lolo Rudolph on St. Augustine. I know you and I have talked about him a bit. Yeah. But he's such a good, well-rounded player, and he's a point guard. If anyone doesn't know, junior point guard, but I feel like he's bound to explode into the national scene at any second now. I don't know if you saw today, actually, they announced he's going to play with Team Why Not this summer. So that'll definitely help him out in terms of rankings and getting recognition. But he was so good last night against West Ranch, where it was, I mean, really back and forth for most of the game. And I mean, West Ranch even took a 5-point lead with a few minutes left, but I feel like Lolo throughout the game showed his composure, but was also aggressive and, I mean, not afraid to take it to the hoop for floaters and finishes around, I mean, the 7-footer Jazz Gardner.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought he was really good at the Tark back in December. I thought he was really good. If I've seen him, I guess it was Border League. I saw him at Border. I always can't remember which events it was because they all kind of run together. But yeah, man, I'm with you, man. I'm buying stock in Lolo for sure. I think he's been one of those players that has been so consistent. I think anytime you have a player like Jurian Dixon who's really good with the ball, pretty ball dominant, will score a lot of points, you're going to have to find your moments to create and to really kind of be somebody that can also take over the game. We've seen this maturation process happen with him through these types of events and these types of games and matchups over the last couple of years. So it was good to see him kind of moving in that direction. But I'm with you. I think when you look at the spring, really, I think when you look right now for this March kind of catapult, I think April is going to be really, really good for him and his college coaches. And it feels like college coaches, by the way, are kind of getting back to like recruiting high school guys a little bit more. The transfer portal dialogue's still there. It's never going to go away. But I feel like more value is being placed on high school guys. And I'd be interested to see how much the Pac-12 really kind of leans into a guy like Lolo moving forward. So any other players that have thus far, I know it's still kind of early, but thus far that have kind of leveled up in your eyes?
Yeah, I mentioned him before. I'll mention him again. Connor Sevilla on Doherty Valley. I mean, 50%, nearly 50% from three from the season. I was watching a clip. He took a three from probably about 6 or 7 feet beyond the 3-point line. And I'm just like he swished it, nothing but net. And I was like, geez. But he can really shoot the ball. And I think people are going to start seeing that, especially, I mean, in this big matchup against St. Joseph. But yeah, like I said, he can really shoot it. He's a player that I've seen throughout the season a bit. And I would say he's a multiple level scorer as well. He can get to the hoop and finish well. Him and Beasley it's interesting because they have kind of the same play style in a sense, but it really works with Beasley at that 1 and Sevilla at that 2. And it's like those two guys kind of just complement each other's games in how Beasley is really a 3-level scorer and can attack and do everything. But once the defense gravitates to him, it leaves open Sevilla, who's proved that he can knock down big shots.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time of year. If you can knock down a shot, this is your favorite time of year because it seems like that basket gets a little bit bigger and those moments get even bigger too. So certainly a guy that, Tunde and friends at St. Joe's are going to have to really keep their eyes on him in the scouting report, which I'm sure they already do moving forward. But yeah, man, this is the fun part of year. We've got so much action to kind of keep up with. I'm with you, man. I think the CIF from top to bottom is right now nationally the toughest league to win. We've got some really good action going on in Georgia. We had some powerhouses from a public school perspective. Now, a lot of prep schools and stuff get a ton of pub. Obviously, you cover the NIBC pretty aggressively. Great games, great matchups. But there's something that's a little different for public school basketball in California, man. The depth of talent is so good. And if you get a chance, which I know I've seen the crowds, people are going out and getting there early, which is so good to see. I know this is going to be a fun weekend in the state of California moving forward. We'll definitely be keeping up with you, Griffin. Where can we follow people? Where can people follow you on Twitter? What's your handle?
Yeah, find me at Griff Greenburg. Just as simple as that. And I will say a couple more points before we log off here, if that's all right, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. Fire away.
I don't think many people realize, but number 1 seed Modesto Christian and number 1 seeded Centennial in this open division bracket are the teams that faced each other in the championship last season. So interesting point there, especially with Modesto, who you mentioned the NIBC. They lost Jamari Phillips, who transferred to an NIBC team. But I mean, they're still right at the top of the pack with BJ Davis and a few other players that have really pushed them ahead this season. And they'll take on De La Salle, who I know another we talked about them earlier because they're the only team that has beaten West Lynn this season. So little interesting little fact there. West Lynn, I think, is a team, that blew up on the national scene when they beat Duncanville. Just
Jackson Shelstead also is one of those guys that I think nationally people don't have a clue to how good that guy is as well. So Oregon certainly has a good one coming again. West Lynn's been good. The Ducks, man. Peyton Pritchard came from West Lynn, and now we got Jackson Shelstead. Here's a great trivia question. Speaking about West Lynn, sorry, we're kind of pivoting a little bit from California. Can you name a quarterback that played college football in Southern California that's a West Lynn grad? This one's a deep cut. You probably weren't even born.
That's a West Lynn grad.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, man. I totally – now I'm stumping myself. Oh, Cade McNown. There we go. I totally lost his name. Cade McNown played at UCLA, then he went on and played for the Bears and a couple teams in the NFL, but was a big West Lynn guy as well. So, sorry. I almost had a true old man moment where I didn't know the answer to my own trivia question. That would have been embarrassing. I had to get some more sleep, I think is what that means. I think that's what that means. But nevertheless, yeah, so many fun things. And with Modesto Christian, that is interesting, right? Like you lose a guy like Jamari Phillips, who's going to Arizona, who was one of the best players in the class of 2024, and a dynamic player at that. And then BJ Davis, again, we talk about Ryan Beasley. BJ Davis, to me, is another guy nationally that I think people know who he is, but I don't know if they know how good he really is. And I think this is season, certainly with all the roster change up when it happened, certainly goes to show, one, that they're really well coached, and two, they've got a really good player in BJ Davis that can kind of shoulder that load and move forward. But, man, I feel like every single team that's in the bracket, there's like such a really good talking point that this could be a 5-hour conversation, really, if we wanted to go through it.
There's so many teams that you could argue a very strong case for making it through this playoff bracket.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's the beauty of it, man. Sometimes you don't have enough good teams to fill the tournament. Sometimes you got too many teams to fill the tournament. So I feel like this year's the latter, no doubt about it. But anytime that you got, fans in the seats, it's CIF basketball, man. It is so, so good. And it definitely leads into what should be a tremendous travel season, which is right around the corner, which we know that we'll be at and seeing a lot of good stuff. By the way, since I got you here, how was the NIBC season as we look forward to that kind of wrapping up, as we got Geico in the forefront coming up soon? Give me your take. I mean, we talked about Montverde. Is there gap with the rest of the NIBC getting wider, or do we feel like it's just as competitive as always?
I do think it's a pretty sizable gap as of now. I mean, they've just turned it up to, I mean, in national games, especially at Hoopball Classic, they just turned it up to such another level that it's crazy to see where they are compared to a couple other teams who are struggling. But I will say some teams like Long Island Lutheran, IMG, AZ Compass, Sunrise Christian, they can still definitely make a threat as we get into the end of the season. It is interesting, though, because I think Montverde finished their season a week or two ago. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of use that transition period to go into Geico Nationals, which they will undoubtedly make, being in the NIBC.
Yeah, that's been a fun league to watch. I'm with you on Lou High. I mean, we talked about even way back in the beginning of December, like, man, this team is really freaking good. And it seems like they just continue to level up. But the balance, it feels like, it looks like, sometimes in the ACC, you got like 4 teams in the top 12. I feel like the NIBC was that type of league this year at the very top. It was just like so freaking good that you can be number 1 1 week, you can be number 12 in another week, and still just be as good. The gap isn't that wide. But anyways, well, we're kind of all over the map, which I kind of love, man. It just means we got lots of good basketball to talk about. I do like the fact that you tossed in a little Westland, a little Oregon basketball. I've been keeping up with a lot of Utah playoffs going on. Obviously, Arizona's been going on really, really well. Perry High School's just cruising right along. Looks like we're going to be another state championship down here in the Phoenix area. Of course, I got my eyes up in the Seattle area as well. So, and even got a sleeper. We'll talk about him soon. Sleeper in the state of Idaho, which, as we know, that's my favorite state for sleepers in the West Coast. So I got another one, man. I love it. We'll talk about him soon enough. But this is good stuff, Griffin. Make sure everybody follows Griffin on Twitter. He'll be out and about in California and getting back to his roots and seeing some good ball. So, and again, if you're watching here on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We definitely appreciate it as we get moving forward. So, Griff, this was good, man. We'll do it again next week, okay?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Justin.
All right, sounds good. We'll talk to you next week. And thanks, everybody, for watching. Take care.